Hey everyone, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel, and this is the Daily Uncut News. So we're starting with Nikola today, and if you don't know, they're that fraudulent, scammy company that said, hey everyone, we got a truck, and you should totally invest in it, and here's the deal with the scam. The truck didn't work. They rolled the truck down a hill, they videotaped it, and then basically used that as marketing purposes. Now, obviously it sounds really funny, but it's not funny to investors if you invest in this thing, and it's not funny to the government, and so they're on trial for securities fraud. Here's the other thing too that actually is legitimately funny. Here's their defense. They're going to defend that the definition of prototype, functional, and show car are different than what investors thought. So meaning that when they said, hey, when we told you guys functional and prototype, you just did misunderstood us. You don't know what the word functional means. So that's their defense. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts if you think that is a good defense, because I guess in their defense you could say, well, what we meant when functional meant that it rolls down hills. So I don't know what you thought we meant, but we meant it rolls down the hills, and see, it rolls down hills. So it is pretty ridiculous defense. But I'd love to hear you guys think if they're going to get away with that one. Got to have a good lawyer, right? Also, too, going around the world is we're dealing with the housing markets in different countries, and they're cooling off, right? So one of the things that is interesting is you take a look at this chart. And first is the bubbly markets is actually Canada, Australia, I believe UK is in a bubble, and you can certainly argue the USA is in a bubble as well. Now, countries handle bubbles differently in sort of post-bubble. The thing that really gets people is if you took out a mortgage at a variable interest rate loan, interest rates go up, right? Because you guys know this, as inflation go up, essentially the central banks have to raise interest rates to basically cool the economies. And if you borrowed money to buy a house, say at just at your means or above your means, suddenly you're really in trouble as your payments will go up like crazy as you start ticking up interest rates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%, whatever it's going to be. Australia, in fact, 93% of borrowers who took out a loan in, say, 2020 took a variable interest loan. And you take a look at Spain, UK, and Canada also have that, but Australia is just the largest. In the USA, we're at the bottom of the chart. We just don't take as many variable loans this time around. Doesn't mean we never do it, but just this time around compared to other countries. So that is something to watch. And I just don't know exactly why the Australians are different. And it was kind of interesting to see that I was reading that the Canadian market is still in a bubble. In fact, one of the big cities is Toronto. You can see, for example, Sydney, Auckland, and Stockholm, the prices are starting to come down. But Toronto, the housing prices are still hanging out there. So, for those Canadians that are in the channel, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know the LA market. I know the New York market. We live in LA. I can tell you LA hasn't really crashed either. And it could be just like a Toronto. There's certain cities that are in high demand, or also, too, which is a real thing, there are certain cities where you get a lot of investors coming in. And in my opinion, this should be illegal. So what's going on is that big companies come in and buy up single-family homes, and then think of it this way: if someone can come in and buy up everything, then they can control the price, and it becomes a problem because a lot of these places will be sitting empty, or it might be someone's 10th home or something of that nature. So it creates a real problem for regular people who want to buy homes and have jobs and stuff like that. And one of the things that I keep saying over and over again, this should be made illegal, and it should be a political issue. I will harp on this channel forever and ever and ever. But it was interesting. If anyone has any thoughts of why Toronto hasn't crashed, I'd love to hear that. Also, too, there was an earthquake in China. So I used to live in China, and I always pay attention to the news there. Not only just because I care about my Chinese friends. It's a big part of the world economy. They're the second biggest economy. You guys know this. They had an earthquake in Sichuan, 6.8. So it's actually quite big. The other thing that's been going on too is they're having COVID lockdowns. I would believe it's Chengdu. It's millions of people are in lockdown. And then also too in Beijing, they announced recently that some of the universities students are getting sick from going home, for a holiday kind of thing. They come back, they get sick with COVID, and so they lock down the university. And the way it works, because I used to teach at Tsinghua, this which is also in Beijing, is many universities have walls around the campuses, and so they'll basically just say, hey, you can't leave. And if a student tries to leave, which happened to a few students at Tsinghua, you basically get expelled from school. So they take this stuff really, really seriously in China. This affects, like I said, affects the people, but it also affects demand. When you essentially have all these people who can't buy anything, and also affects the supply chains, right? There's a typhoon heading for Shanghai, so we'll keep an eye on that. Actually, so we're in Seoul right now. We're moving to Busan in Korea in 2 days. There was just a typhoon that hit Korea It was supposed to be much heavier in Busan, but ended up being really, really light. Oh, not really light, but ended up being much lighter than what was expected because they were actually expecting the biggest storm in history kind of thing. And I'm serious. They kept saying like this could be the worst storm in 100 years. It ended up being bad, but just not as bad as people thought. So we'll see if the one heading for Shanghai is going to end up being that bad. It's hard to read the weather, but do pay attention to this kind of stuff. Also, too, in India, they're facing a housing issue like other countries. And so one of the things that the Indian developers are doing essentially is offering people incentives. It's kind of similar to what we saw, say, with the USA or what we saw in China is they're trying to get people into these things that they're building. The problem is that when the people don't want to buy, the money cycle ends and it becomes a domino. I think you guys know this. And so one of the things that they're doing in India, and this is something that you always gotta be careful of, they'll offer you like a introductory interest rate, introductory mortgage for like, say 2 or 3%, for example. But then after like a year or two, then suddenly it spikes. And then if we do go into recession, people don't have jobs and you get more domino because like they can't pay now the elevated mortgage fees. So keep an eye on this stuff, guys. That's why I always show you the news, because I want you to understand that like what's going on all around the world affects us, and we're all connected and we all have the same problems. Like Japan, for example, is they're having a lack of tourism problem, right? And this is something that we mentioned before yesterday was you remember Chinese people like to travel all over the world, right? And you take a look at something like Japan, the numbers were, so this is really interesting. So last year, they had 246,000 foreign visitors. And this is compared to 2019 where they had 31.9 million. So that is a huge drop. 31.9 million was like kind of normal levels for tourism, down to basically 250,000. So these are the sort of things that have been rupturing economies, is when essentially we're all locked down, we can't go anywhere, and so economies are slowed. Whether or not we can get back to this regular schedule remains to be seen. I know we're going to reopen one of these days. I mean, I think USA, basically you guys are open. We were just there. So here in Korea, I can just tell you, we're still wearing masks everywhere, but pretty much everything is open. But yes, we are wearing masks. Although, if you want to see a vlog I did when we visited family, my wife's grandmother, she's in the hospital, and in fact, we were not allowed to enter the hospital. So you can watch that video if you like. But just letting you know that COVID is still a real thing in some countries. But I'd say more so in China than Korea, because here the Koreans, we all got the Modernas and the Johnson Johnsons, that kind of stuff. I think my wife's parents got Johnson Johnson. I know my wife got Moderna, but anyway, they got the American stuff. Also too, this is really interesting. We've talked about this. It's always fun to see what's up with Disney. So the original sort of like rumors that was that Disney was going to spin off ESPN, right? Just like, okay, forget about ESPN. Let's just focus on Disney. There was an activist investor, Dan Loeb, who came in and was like, okay, I'm going to get in this thing. I want you to spin off Disney and make it more profitable. Just focus on what you're good at. As it turns out, he changed his mind. They had a talk, and I guess Disney's going to try to really get a lot of growth with ESPN. So I'm not sure how I feel about this one. One thing that's interesting, because remember, so like Disney owns ABC as well, is that they're just becoming so big. I think they bought Fox too. We have a real problem in the USA with basically big conglomerates controlling everything, basically monopolies. So, you could make the case that maybe they shouldn't have been allowed to buy ESPN at all. I'm saying you could make that case. But they're going to hold on to it. I think if in the world of sports, broadcasting, whatever, I actually think sports betting is a future. I've talked about this before on the channel. And I think the real thing, though, with, say, sports or TV or anything, the thing that you want to be looking for is when will Amazon and these big companies start integrating shopping into TV to where, like, I'm watching a game and I can, click on a player's shoes or whatever and buy those shoes instantly. I think that kind of technology, or you can watch a TV show, click on it. And it's something we talked about before. When that technology hits through, there'll be a lot of money in this stuff, and also to integrating, say, sports gambling, whatever. So I'm not sure if Disney, if that would ruin their family image of having sports gambling. I'm curious you guys' thoughts on this thing, but looks like they're going to hold on to it for now. That's kind of interesting. The going back to where we're talking about China and we're talking about, say, with Disney and stuff like that. One of the things that with any of these consumer products, you're worried about people shopping and spending money, right? So if they're all locked down, then suddenly you're worried about, are they going to use any oil? Now, this oil is a tricky one. We're worried about demand, but we haven't even hit winter yet. So I think this is where theoretically you could get a fake out this month of like, oh, well, there's no demand for oil, right? And then suddenly the winter hits, and then suddenly everybody wants oil. So It's hard to say. I would say that we're still going to have an energy demand, and as well too. This is where you don't know. OPEC at any moment they can decide to cut production. They can do whatever they want over there. I keep saying over and over again. It's like the two things I harp about the channel. One is we need to develop more alternative energy technology, and two, we need to limit, like I said, corporations from buying single family homes. Okay. Also too, going on with Ukraine, it looks like the Ukrainians are starting to make a counteroffensive, regaining some territory that Russia had taken. You can see this here. It's actually really interesting that one headline was pretty funny. It said, Russians fled like Olympic sprinters as Ukraine retook the Northeast. So they're starting to push back, the Ukrainians. And one of the things that's happening is I think the Western weapons that we've been shipping them are helping, give them a lot. I think it's like a bunch of Javelin missiles and those kind of things. Now, I do understand, guys. I mean, I really understand. It is for the regular day American, just the regular average American. It's like, why would you want to spend billions of dollars on another country shipping weapons when you have problems in the USA? I totally understand it, right? So that's why I mentioned the cost. I just, believe me, I really understand. Also, too, though, you're just hoping this thing ends as soon as possible. It is a drain on human life, right? It's a drain on the world economy. It's a drain on the food supply. It's just, it's just. Pretty frank, I'm surprised that Putin's still healthy. That's all I have to say about that. It seems like someone would do something like that. And then the last bit of digging today, which is kind of silly. You have actually, see what's the date? You have till to September 14th. If you want to buy some Elon Musk memorabilia, and this is a funny one because basically one of Elon Musk's old girlfriends from the University of Pennsylvania, and actually I went to school there as well, so we went to the same school. But just imagine if you had an ex-girlfriend that's sharing old photos of you, basically in college. Like, she's selling photos of, like, going out to dinner with friends, like this kind of thing. She's selling these things, and people are actually making bids on this stuff. Like, I just get this old picture of Elon as a college student and stuff. The funniest one here actually is really funny. Where is it here? Is this there was a, where is it? I gotta find it. Here it is, right here. This is a birthday card, Elon Musk signed birthday card, and it says "Love Elon." So, I just hope someday that I become rich and famous enough to where, like, my old girlfriends have my old cards and they're actually worth something. So that would actually, then you've made it. You haven't made it until an old birthday card you said an old girlfriend is actually worth something. So evidently, there are 23 bids. It's now at $10,000. I'd love to hear what you're bidding for. Elon Musk, old birthday card. That's the birthday card right there. I mean, it's a real thing. People, you can do this. And then the last thing, to be fair, I know we're all laughing about Elon Musk stuff, but to be fair, there are some of these things that are pretty cool. And guys, people collect anything. If you collect comic books of your favorite superhero, and if you believe Elon Musk is a hero, why not collect cards, to his old girlfriend? But in fact, something like this would be pretty cool. This right here is a letter from Albert Einstein. You can actually buy old handwritten letters by Albert Einstein. So this kind of stuff, I could totally see a rich CEO putting that in their office, or some sort of sports memorabilia, this kind of thing. But I think Albert Einstein stuff would be pretty cool. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts on all these things that we covered today. Hope everything's going great with you, and please join us again next time. So thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next video.